Is brought to you by Quip, the electric toothbrush that is revolutionizing brushing. Everyone, including me, loves Quip. Quip's been on Oprah's O List and named one of Time's best inventions. Quip starts at just $25, and if you go to getquip.com/campfire right now, you'll get your first refill pack free with a Quip electric toothbrush. Thanks, Quip. Also, Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by GAIA, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. Get your first month for only 99 cents. Go to gaia.com/campfire. That's gaia.com/campfire. Thanks, Gaia.
Welcome to our gathering tonight. Here we share stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things. Sit back, relax, and warm yourself by Jim Harold's Campfire.
Welcome to the Campfire. I am Jim Harold, and so glad to be with you once again. And if you don't know what we do here, it's quite simple. Real people call into the program and they tell their spooky stories. It could be ghosts, it could be UFOs, it could be cryptids like Bigfoot, it could be my personal favorite, head scratchers. Perhaps it's the tale of a loved one getting in touch after their death. Whatever it is, they are fascinating, they are true, and we're so glad to share them with you. And here's the Campfire. Emma is on the line from Michigan. She says her dad is a podcast fanatic, and her family also enjoys the supernatural, and he introduced her to the show, and it stuck, and we're so glad.
Yes.
And Emma has a strange story of her own she's going to tell us. Welcome to the show, and tell us what happened.
Thank you. All right. So basically, when I was in about, I was pretty young. I would say fifth grade. I was at my dad's house, and my parents are divorced, so I have lots of siblings at my dad's. And I guess I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and I heard like the voice of my mom, I guess, waking me up. And so I got up, and it was weird because I was at my dad's. So, at that time, it didn't sound weird to me. So anyways, I got up and I started getting ready for school. And then I realized it was the middle of the night, and I just kind of got confused, I guess. So I headed back to bed, and I laid there, and my sister and I shared a bunk bed. She was on the bottom. So I was laying there just waiting to go back to sleep, and my door was open, the light was on in the hall, and all of a sudden I heard my mom's voice again, and it was saying, "Emma, wake up." And it was really, really weird, and I turned and I looked, and I saw like a black figure standing in the doorway. I know, and it was a black figure standing in the doorway. And at first, because I was so tired and confused, I thought it was maybe one of my brothers. And I started saying their names, like, what are you doing? Like, go back to bed. And it just kept saying, like, "Emma, wake up," in my mom's voice. But then the voice started changing.
Oh, man.
And it was like a different voice. But then the shape started changing. And it was horrifying. And I was so scared. I couldn't go back to sleep. And it just kept talking to me. And I was just frozen, and I couldn't move. And eventually I went back to sleep, and it was horrifying. And the next morning I told my dad, and whatever. I blew it off, thought it was a dream. 2 years later, the exact same thing happened again. And it was scary because this time this is going to sound so crazy. It had like a staff almost and horn.
Oh, boy.
And it was so scary to me because I was in like seventh grade. And it was just so weird because it had happened to me before. So I just didn't think it was a dream anymore because if it was so real, like I can't explain how real it felt. And the scary thing was like my sister was right under me because we were sharing a bunk bed, and I was so frozen. I couldn't even say her name to wake her up.
Oh my gosh.
And I know. And then, it happened a few more times after that, and it only talked to me the one time. So anyways, a few years pass, whatever. It hasn't happened for a while. I, for some reason, tell my brother, just randomly. I bring it up, just how this was long after we moved out of that house. I told him about it, and he was like, that happened to me.
Oh man. Oh
And
boy.
I never knew. Apparently he's like a tough guy. He doesn't like to admit when he gets scared, but he said he just, whatever, blew it off, thought it was a dream, but it was standing in the doorway just looking at him. And he said it happened a few times. Like, it walked by the door. He said, when he was in his room one night reading while my brothers were asleep, he saw it walk by, which I had never, whenever I saw it, it was just standing still. So yeah, I guess my whole family's been seeing it.
Do you know anything connected with the history of the house that would lead to something like this?
You know, no, I've never really looked into it because I don't know. I mean, I have my theories, but I have no idea what it could have been.
I'll tell you one thing. It is frightening. I mean, especially when it's got some type of staff and horns. That's when I get out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But you
I couldn't leave.
Now you certainly still enjoy the campfire, though.
I sure do. Yes.
Well, tell Dad we said hello and thank him for telling you about the campfire. And please do call us back if something else like this happens again.
I will. Thank you so much.
Sierra is on the line from Kentucky. Actually, the second caller we've had from Kentucky during this recording session. Don't know if they'll be on the same episode or not, but shout out to Kentucky. And Sierra has a really unique story about her grandfather, and this one got my attention, Sierra. Thank you for joining us on the show, and tell us what happened.
All right. Thanks for having me. Well, first of all, I want to start off saying that I get a little bit choked up telling this story a lot. So,
sure.
Excuse me.
No problem.
So, growing up, my grandfather, he was more like a second father to me. We would spend summers together, weekends, everything like that. And then November 2010, he passed away from a heart attack. And so we've been dealing with that. And 8 years later, we are still grieving. But 2014, I believe, I was in a grocery store and a lady approached me and she said, this is going to sound crazy, but I wanted to let you know that your grandfather didn't feel anything from his heart attack. And I just kind of sat there and I was just in shock. And I couldn't believe what was happening. Mm-hmm. And she was, she just kept going on and on. And she said, he also wanted me to let you know that the roses that you get every year for his birthday, he loves them. They were white roses. She told me like the exact color, everything. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yes, I know. And then she proceeded to say that he leaves pennies for me, my sister, and my mom, but we never pay attention to him. So she was like, you should start paying attention. So we finished our conversation. I went home and me and my mom were talking about it. And she was like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never even heard anything like that. So she goes to the store and comes back and she tells me as soon as she walks through the door of that store, there's a penny on the ground. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. But, it's a store. So I'm like, that could happen to anybody. And I go into the bathroom to go get something. And then I walk back out. And then about 5 minutes later, I go back in and there's a penny on the counter of the bathroom. And I just started like laughing. And then I just like started crying because I was just so emotional, over what the woman told me at the store. So
now this
I don't know,
woman,
it was just crazy.
Now this woman, you didn't know this woman, is that right?
No, never seen her, nothing.
And ostensibly, she would have no way whatsoever of knowing how your grandfather died, if she even knew your grandfather.
Exactly, yeah.
But that message was there. Do you know this was an actual person? Have you seen her before? Have you seen her since? Could have been maybe like I'm just throwing this out there, like an angel with a message? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I mean, that's crossed my mind before, but, I mean, I don't know. Like, I seen her, leaving the store as I was checking out. So, I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. But like I said, I've never seen her a day in my life. And then, this kind of came up. And so it was crazy.
Well, I had an experience. I don't think it was as dramatic as that, but I was in one of those dollar stores, which is funny because someone on the show, one time somebody on social media, another podcaster who was, I don't think his podcast was doing that well. And he said, well, Jim Harold's a millionaire and he can afford all this high tech gear. And I had to laugh because it's like, that's why I'm shopping at the dollar store. But anyway, I believe I was thinking about my late mom that day. And this is a couple of years after she died. And I saw this lady who looked like she could have been my mom's sister. Not a twin, but her hair was the same. She wore similar glasses. She was about the same build, maybe a few years younger than my mom, but really they looked like they could have been sisters. So anyway, she gets in line and I just, quote, coincidentally, am in line after her to pay for my little $5 worth of stuff or whatever it was. And the woman had a soft drink in her hand, a bottle of Pepsi. I hope I'm able to say that, bottle of Pepsi. And I don't talk to her or anything. She turns around. She says, could you please open this pop for me? Soda for me. And I just thought it was the weirdest thing because I don't think I've ever, I've been, I'm getting up there in age. I've been in a lot of stores in my life. I don't think anybody's ever turned around and say, can you open this soft drink for me? And I just thought it was a really weird thing. I don't know if it was just a big coincidence or the universe was trying to tell me something or my mom was trying to tell me something. Now, of course, what you're saying is way beyond that in terms of this woman saying your grandfather didn't feel anything. And I think that's really important for people when somebody passes and you don't know the specifics of it, that it really, it's got to be a comfort to know that he didn't feel any pain, I assume. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, definitely. When he passed away, the examiner, she told us that, it was a heart attack and he passed away in his sleep, but just, immediate family knew that. No one else outside of the family really knew that. So hearing it come from her was crazy.
Have you had any other messages or has that been, it up to date, the pennies in this woman?
Me and my mom were actually talking about it today. I was at work, probably, this was a few years ago, but I remember a penny flew out of the air and hit me on my shoulder area. And I've looked around and there was no one around. So it's mostly the pennies. Sometimes random songs will come on the radio that we used to listen to together. So it's stuff like that.
Well, I think it's such a nice thing. And, we like the spooky stories, but we love these stories too, because I think they're just as important. The stories where you find out, or maybe more important actually, where you find out that a loved one is still looking out for you and wants to communicate with you. And sometimes it may not be the most direct way, but they certainly get your attention. Sierra, thank you for being a part of the campfire tonight. Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by Quip. Now, once I got introduced to Quip, it's an electric toothbrush that's revolutionizing the way that we brush our teeth, I learned something, and I'd never really thought about this. The truth is most of us are brushing our teeth wrong. Not for long enough, and we forget to change our brush on time. And I kind of blame myself for that, but that's unfortunately kind of the way we've been conditioned. Because most brands, well, when they're marketing and so forth, they focus on selling flashy gimmicks, not better brushing. But that's not Quip. But let me tell you why Quip is so different. For starters, Quip is an electric toothbrush that is a fraction of the cost of the bulkier brushes, while it still packs just the right amount of vibrations to help clean your teeth. Quip has a built-in timer, and it helps you clean for the dentist recommended 2 minutes with guiding pulses that remind you when to switch sides. So it basically, you're holding it, but it's holding your hand, telling you what to do. And again, we don't think about it. We kind of throw a toothbrush in our mouth and we just go to it. And we're not doing it the right way, folks. And the thing about Quip is their subscription plans, well, they're for your health, not just convenience, although they're very convenient. They deliver new brush heads on a dentist-recommended schedule every 3 months for just $5, including free shipping worldwide. And I got to tell you, it's kind of that set it and forget it thing. With the regular toothbrush, I don't even want to tell you how long it's been since I changed. But now that I've converted to Quip, that comes every 3 months. And, don't have to think about it. And the less I have to think about, believe me, the better. Quip also comes with a mount that suctions right to your mirror, and it unsticks to use as a cover for hygienic travel wherever you take your teeth. And the thing is that it's not just me. Everyone is loving on Quip. I got to tell you this. They were on Oprah's O List. They were named one of Time's best inventions, and this is really important. They were the first subscription electric toothbrush accepted by the American Dental Association. Plus, they're backed by a network of over 20,000 dentists and hygienists, and hundreds of thousands of happy brushers use Quip every day. And the best news of all is that we got you a deal. Now, Quip starts at just $25, but if you go to getquip.com/campfire right now, that's GETQUIP.com/campfire. You'll get your first refill pack free with a Quip electric toothbrush. That's your first refill pack free at getquip.com/campfire. Again, spelled out, GETQUIP.com/campfire. It's one of those things that you take for granted, but if you think about it, that's one of the most important things that you can do for your health each and every day. And that's why Quip wants you to brush better, and they're going to help you do it. So again, go to getquip.com/campfire, get the deal, and get the best brush of your life with Quip. Thanks, Quip. Rick is on the line all the way from Texas. Now imagine nighttime, and there's something knocking on your window. Well, I got to tell you, that's frightening enough. But wait till you find what was knocking on Rick's window. We're so glad to have him with us. I know his buddy Rob told him about the shows. Rob was listening to shows. Rick overheard it, said, I want to check that out. He became a fan. So, Rob, thank you. And make that a lesson, everybody. Please play the show out loud so we can get a lot of people listening. Rick, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us what happened with this strange thing knocking on your windows at night.
No problem. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. This all started back in 2000, back when I was 13. It was during the summertime, and for most people who live in South Texas know how hot it gets during here during the summertime. So I was laying in bed, and back then we didn't have any air cons. All we had was little fans. So I like to sleep with my window open and the curtain open so I can get some air in as well. This one particular night when it first started happening, I was asleep, and I heard like little tapping on the window. I thought nothing of it, so I just continued to sleep, and the tapping kept growing and increasing, so I finally woke up, and I see this outline of a shadow. It looked like a person, but he had like no features. It was just like a dark figure.
Right.
The only thing I could notice on him was two red eyes.
Oh, my.
So I woke up, and I stared at it, and then I screamed, and being 13 at the time, my parents ran into the room. And they were asking me what was wrong, and I kept pointing out the window. They saw they looked out the window and they didn't see anything. So my dad went outside. Dads do this flashlight. He didn't find anything. So we just played it off. They go, it was just your imagination. So I thought, okay, maybe I was just seeing things. So a couple of nights go by. I don't notice anything again. And then once again, I hear the tapping on the window.
Oh, man.
This time I opened up my eyes and it wasn't on the window. It was near my bed. So
oh, man.
At this point, I am starting to freak out even more. And again, I scream for my parents. They run into the room, and I tell them what I saw. And when I told them what I saw, my dad had that look on his face. So you're just imagining things. And I see my mom, and she has this kind of like shocked look on her face. That plays into the story a little bit later on. So they again leave my room, and a couple of nights go by, and then it happens again. It starts off with the tapping like always, and this time I felt a little pressure on my arm. I wake up and this thing is next to my bed with what I see an outline of an arm pressing down on my shoulder.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and I wake up again and I start screaming again. My parents run in. This time I take a look at where he was pressing down. It was all red and with 2 scratches on me.
Oh, man. And physical proof. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my mom was like, did you scratch yourself at night? I'm like, no, it was the same thing that I've been seeing. And throughout this goes on about 2 months. And then by the 3rd month of this happening, my mom had become sick earlier that year with breast cancer. And she had ended up passing away 2 months after that. And like once again, we hear the little tapping, and I wake up again in the middle of the night. It had been 2 weeks since my mom had passed away. And within those 2 weeks, I didn't see or hear from that shadow figure. And then once again, I hear the tapping, and this was after the funeral, the 2 weeks after the funeral, and then I hear the tapping again. But this time, when I woke up, it was like kind of hovering over me with my shoulders pressed down. And by this point, I'm freaking out. I try to scream, but nothing comes out. And then I hear what I think is my mom's voice saying, speaking in Spanish, "Leave my child alone." And this thing just looks into the corner of my room, and then all of a sudden just dissipates. Again, I wake up and I have scratches on one of my shoulders, and the other one just has a red mark. I ran to my dad's room and I told him what was going on. And then that's when finally my dad goes, well, since your mom's no longer here, I feel like I can tell you this. Growing up, my parents they grew up next to each other and they were raised together. So my dad had told me that when my mom was 13, the same age that I was seeing this thing, that she was seeing something similar to what I was seeing.
Wow. Now, do you think that was some kind of an omen of some type?
For that, I don't really know. My dad always told me that my mom felt like she had a curse on her because I was the only one that saw it, and the people on her side of the family are the only one that have seen this thing as well. My dad has never seen it, and his side of the family has never experienced anything like this.
And it never came back again after that last incident?
After that last incident, no, I've never seen it again.
Wow. That's quite a story, Rick, I got to tell you. And again, sorry about you losing your mom at a young age. It has to be very, very tough. But obviously, she cared for you very much, and she was there to defend you, even though she had passed beyond this life and apparently scared whatever this thing is off. So she was still there for you.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, even though I did lose her, I feel like I gained her as like a protector looking over me. So that's one good thing that did come out of this.
There you have it. Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank Rob again for telling you about the show, and we appreciate you both being a part of the campfire.
No problem, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, she's relatively new to the show, 6 months. She found the Paranormal Podcast and then graduated over to the Campfire. I hope she still listens to both of them. And we thank her so much. Rosa from California is joining us. We're doing this call in the morning, so it's about 7 a.m. there. So Rosa must be an early riser. But anyhow, I just wanted to say thank you for being on the show and tell us about this house. It sounds like you had some strange experiences in a house, and you're going to tell us all about it.
Yeah. So my parents purchased the house back in 2009, and this house was, the rundown house on the block, the one that just looked like it hadn't been touched in years, and it actually had been abandoned. So they purchased this house and did a lot of remodeling work for us to be able to move in. And one of the remodels that they did was actually convert the garage into a bedroom and laundry room facility. So once we moved in, I actually moved into that bedroom, and immediately I started feeling something was off, and I really couldn't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
At night, the room would drop, and it would be so cold that I could see my breath. And now, like you said, I live in California, so it doesn't really get that cold usually. But for some reason, and specifically in this room, it would just get so cold. And it just felt kind of uncomfortable at night. So I just assumed it was moving into a new place and a new neighborhood. So I just kind of wrote it off at first. Eventually, though, some odd things started to happen. I have a dog who would sleep in the room with me, and she is a really passive dog. Like, people actually joke that she's a dog in a cat's body, a cat in a dog's body, because she doesn't really bark. She's really one of those lap dogs that really just wants to be pet, doesn't want to do anything else.
Right.
So at night, though, I noticed that she started growling. And so this really caught me off guard because she, like I said, never really does this. And so I woke up and I saw her growling. Basically, my bed was just kind of in a corner of the room, and I could see the entryway into the laundry room from where I would go to sleep. And so she was facing that direction, and it was a really aggressive sounding growl, and it looked like she was looking at something.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, I absolutely get freaked out, and I turn on the light and there's nothing there. And at this point, the doorway didn't actually have a door in it, so I can actually see into the next room. So I decided, she probably just got scared from a shadow from a driving car, or because it's a little darker in that other room, maybe she's just having a trick played on her eyes. I think really just trying to make myself feel better.
Right.
So, so that happened a few nights in a row. And, it actually started getting to the point where I would wake up and I would tell my dog, like, what are you doing? Like, I need to go to sleep. Like, we need to stop this game. And then it started to get a little more escalated. So what I would start to feel is I would feel like someone was watching me while I was sleeping. And usually right around the time I would get that feeling, I would start to hear my dog growl. And, I would wake up, I would turn on all the lights, I would look in the other room. There's nothing there, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. And, this happened for a few nights. And at this point, I started to get pretty nervous.
Sure.
And, my mom, she's one of those people that doesn't really like to talk about these things. They really scare her. So in my head, I'm like, well, I don't want to tell my mom. We just moved into this place. She's so excited. And I don't want to be, the buzzkill that says, by the way, there's something spooky happening at night. So, I just decided to keep it to myself. And again, just kind of wrote it off like, well, maybe it's just moving to a new place and all of that good stuff. But then there was one night and it was like a weird situation, kind of like a head scratcher. So I was asleep, and then I felt like I woke up and to see a face right in front of my face. And it was like it looked like an older man with like, I don't know how to explain it. Like his face was lit up from the other side. So it looked like it was almost glowing.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was like, I opened my eyes and I felt like he was right there. And so when that happened, I jolted and then I sat up in my bed, and then it felt like almost like I woke up again, like a deja vu of I saw the face and then I woke up again and actually sat up in bed. And, that event really, really freaked me out. So actually for the next few days, I actually slept in the living room because I was so freaked out by it. Like I said, it just was really detailed. Like I could just see his face. It was what felt like inches away from my face. And so I just was not having it. I wasn't staying in the room for a few days. My mom actually asked me, and I just kept telling her, well, it's just getting too cold in there, so I'm going to stay out in the living room. Eventually, I talked myself back into staying in the room. So I went back in, and I just decided, okay, whatever's going on here, like, I'm not going to let this affect me. Like, I don't think that they can actually do anything. So if there is someone here, I'm just going to have to deal with it. And hopefully, this type of scary thing won't happen again. So at one point, the following night, I felt that feeling of being watched.
Mm-hmm.
So out loud, I was just kind of like, hey, stop that. I'm trying to sleep. I'm going to go to sleep. Stop it. And it didn't feel like the feeling subsided, but it made me feel good enough just to go back to sleep. So I did that for a few nights, and, nothing new happened. A few weeks later, though, I did have an event where it felt like my bed shook.
Ooh.
And it wasn't a car driving by. It wasn't, we lived on a residential street, so you don't have huge trailers driving by that would cause the room to shake. And this was, of course, it was like 2 a.m, so there wasn't really much traffic going on, but I woke up and my bed was clearly shaking. So that moment really, really scared me. And at that point, again, I get up and I said, you need to stop. Like, you need to leave me alone. I'm not doing anything. You don't live here anymore. And, I went back to bed that night. So a few weeks later, I believe it was one of the holidays. I think it was Thanksgiving. My family all got together and we were having dinner at an aunt's house. And one of the topics that came up were actually ghost stories. So we started talking about just different ghost stories that my family knew. And so I decided, well, now's the time. Everyone's here together. Like, I might as well say something of what's been going on. So I go ahead and start telling my family, well, there's something weird going on at the house that we just moved into. And I started explaining what happened. And I look across the room and my mom's face is just like she saw a ghost right then and there, she's just shocked. And then I look at her and I said, like, well, it's nothing, to be scared about. Nothing's happened. And, whenever something does happen, I just say something and it feels like it stops. And then she just kind of stays quiet for a minute. And then she says, well, stuff's been happening to me too. And, our whole family's just kind of in shock. So it turns out that my mom, she was home alone one day. No one was in the house, and she had gone from the kitchen into the bedroom to grab something. And when she came back out, all of the lights were on in the living room and the kitchen. And this is the middle of the day. Nothing should have been on. My siblings were either at school or at work, and there shouldn't have been any reason for the lights to trigger. And like I said, it was only in those 2 rooms, in the kitchen and the living room. But every light was on. The overhead light, the little side light that we have on the side table, everything turned on. So she was really freaked out by that. She also said that she would hear things coming from the garage, like if there was things moving around, to the point where she actually hired an exterminator because she thought that we might have, some vermin out there. Right. She swore she would hear things moving around in the garage. And then lastly, my brother basically let us know that he was home alone one day, and he heard someone pull out a chair in the dining room table. So he actually thought that I had gone home from work, so he came out looking for me. And of course, I'm not home. No one's home, yet there's a chair pulled away from our dining room table, and it's in the middle of the dining room.
Whoa.
So, yeah. It was pretty crazy, and it was just, it was very interesting because no one really wanted to say anything to anyone, and I think we were all just kind of freaked out that it was happening, but really excited to be in a new home. So when we all met, it was very interesting. We all got to talk about it. After that day, my mom, she actually put a crucifix in my room, and I'm not sure if it was that or just how I had been addressing the situations when it did happen, but slowly it subsided. I would still feel a presence. And even sometimes when I go to my mom's house, I still kind of feel something, but definitely nothing actively working or nothing actively moving or anything like that. But it was definitely a very interesting few first months there.
I guess so. Well, my goodness. Well, Rosa, thank you so much. Now, did you guys eventually move out of the house? Or are you still there?
Actually, they are selling the house now. So the house is on the market currently. But yeah, she's been there the whole time. And I mean, she loves her house. This is just kind of one of those stories that we have.
Well, it's one of those things, if anybody wants a slightly haunted house. And you did say in your email that there was some background to the house?
Oh, yes. So, once we had our discussion, we actually ended up speaking with some neighbors, and we did find out that the house used to be a halfway house, and that there was one death that they could recall in, recent history before that group left, of someone that overdosed in the house. So whether that's a direct correlation or not, but we did find that out, and that honestly, that probably was one of the most shocking pieces to find out after we had all kind of told our stories, to find that, well, there was a death in the house not that long ago.
Yeah, that's a little bit of validation. Maybe there was just some bad energy there, and I thought it was interesting. When you put the crucifix up, it subsided. Well, thank you so much, Rosa, for getting up early and telling your campfire story, and please tell your friends.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by GAIA, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. And keep listening, because I'm going to tell you how you can get your first month for only 99 cents. You and I, well, we're different kinds of people. Believe it or not, some people out there don't concern themselves with the mysteries of life, the afterlife, ghosts, UFOs, ancient mysteries, and the metaphysical. But we certainly do, and I think that's why so many of you love the Campfire and the other podcasts I do, and that's why I'm absolutely positive you're going to love GAIA just as much. Now, I enjoy comedies and drama and the programming from those huge streaming services as much as the next person, but they're definitely missing something. Something important to people like us, great content on the topics we love. But thankfully, there's GAIA. Now, what is GAIA? Well, GAIA is the video streaming service that focuses on the topics we love with high-quality programming that you can't find anywhere else. It's not something you can search for on the internet and that kind of thing. Just a ton of originally produced content that they do. They go out and they also find the best content from third parties. So you are talking about high quality stuff. So you need to check out GAIA. And the good news is that you can watch GAIA if you're listening to this show, because you can get it on pretty much all of your devices. Apple TV, your iPhone, your iPad, your Chromecast, your Android device, Fire TV, your Roku, your computer. If you're listening to the Campfire, well, you can watch GAIA. And here's some of what you're missing if you're not tuned in. On Wisdom Teachings this week, a new episode, David Wilcock explores the mathematical codes built into the Hebrew alphabet as a way to connect sound and resonance with consciousness and manifestation in geometric science of the Kabbalah. Or perhaps you would like to check out Regina Meredith's Open Minds. Always enjoy that show. And this week she tells from rocket scientist to intuitive genius. It is the story of Olympia LaPointe. Facing a life full of challenges, beset with a determination to succeed, Olympia LaPointe became a true hidden figure herself within the rocket science community. Now she helps people to realize their own intuitive genius and unleash the hidden power of chaotic trauma. And there's so much on GAIA. There's shows like George Norrie's Beyond Belief, Cosmic Disclosure, and that is just scratching the surface. It's really, truly a video treasure trove. So here's how you get it. Go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's GAIA.com/campfire. Now, I've handpicked some shows there on UFOs, haunted places, and Bigfoot that I thought you might like, and you can watch those, and you don't have to sign in or give your email address or anything for that. On that page, you'll even find my appearance from a couple of years back on Beyond Belief with George Norrie. Then after you've watched these, I know you're going to say, hey, Jim was right. This is really good stuff. I want this. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. There you can get your first month for only 99 cents. I mean, that's close to nothing. It's a great deal, And there's so much to enjoy for that 1 month. I know you're going to love it. And I'm sure once that month is up, you're going to say, hey, I'm sticking with it because Gaia is great. So I'd like you to check it out and also to thank them for the support of the shows. Go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's GAIA.com/campfire to see what's happening on the largest consciousness media streaming platform in the world. I love it. You'll love it. Thanks, Gaia. Well, next up on the campfire is Carm from Delaware, and we're so glad to have her on the show. And by the way, her nephew Michael told her about the program, and that's why she's listening and calling in tonight. So hi, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for spreading the campfire word. We really appreciate it. And your aunt is on the show, and she is going to tell us a story that surrounds your grandfather. Isn't that right, Carm?
Yes, Jim. It's about we called my mother's parents Nana and Pop-Pop.
Okay.
And my Nana passed away in February of 73, and Pop-Pop passed away on May 31st of 73. They were married for like 70 years, and they died within 3 months of each other.
Oh, my.
So,
and that doesn't strike me as a coincidence.
No. And we were all, we were all pretty devastated. And it was, I was about 10. And one Saturday night, I was, both my parents were working, and I was across the street at a neighbor's, and I didn't like what they were watching on TV, so I wanted to go home and get a book. And it was a row house in Philadelphia. And I went in the house, and I turned on the light to look for the book, and I saw Pop-Pop sitting at his chair at the dining room table. There was like a doorway between the living room and the dining room, but there was no door there. And he got up out of the chair, and he like started to come towards me, and I screamed, and I think the whole neighborhood heard me and went running out of the house.
Oh my goodness.
And one of the neighbors was like, no, he wouldn't hurt you. You shouldn't have run away. And then when my parents came home, my dad came home first, and he said, you just imagined it. You just miss him. And I was crying. I was like, he's never going to come see me again because I screamed and I ran away. And Dad was like, don't worry about it. And then about a couple months later, it was during, came home from school, and my mom was in the kitchen, and my mom had a beautiful voice, but she didn't like when people heard her singing. So we would be quiet when we went in the house in case she was singing. So she would keep singing, but she wasn't singing.
Yeah.
So I went back into the kitchen, and she said, Pop-Pop was here. And I said, what happened? And she said, she was doing dishes at the sink, and she kind of like looked to the corner of her, out of the corner of her eye, and she saw him coming through the door, and it startled her. And she said, what do you want, Pop? And he disappeared. So then she was crying and saying he's never going to come see me again because, she scared him. So Dad was like, oh, you're both just imagining things. You just miss them. It's fine. So I know it was a Wednesday night because we came home from choir practice, and Mom and I walked in, and Dad was sitting on the living room sofa, and he never sat on the sofa. He was either laying down on the sofa or in the recliner. And Mom said, what's wrong? And he said, Pop was just here. And we were both like, I think we were both like, told you so. We were we were both like, see? And he said, yeah, he came in, and he came down the steps, and he sat down in the chair, and our dog Sandy ran over to him and was wagging his tail. And so we were like, see, we're not crazy. And periodically, the dog would do that. The dog would act like he was sitting in the chair. So, we just kind of went on, and it was about 6 years later, one of my friends from high school had a sister who lived in Boston and worked at Harvard, and my friend's mom wanted her to go up for a month to get out of Philly. So she asked if I could go, and my parents said yes. So it was me and my friend Karen and her sister Cindy. And we all went up to Boston to stay with her sister Jeannie, who was 26. So we were 26, 19, and two 15-year-olds. So Jeannie decided to get a cottage on Cape Cod, and we were going to go stay there for a week. So we got there like on a Sunday. We were unpacking. It's 1979. There's no cell phones. The cottage had no phone. It had one door in and out. So we're unpacking, and this car pulls up with a bunch of guys in it, and the driver says, "Hi, I'm the landlord's son. Do you girls want to smoke some pot with us?" And Jeannie was like, "No." There wasn't a discussion. She was just like, "No." So they left, and we went about our business, and that night we probably went to sleep. Maybe, I don't know. It was late. We stayed up late talking and stuff, but we went to sleep. We turned out all the lights, and then I don't know what time it was. I don't really remember, but it was late, and we started hearing footsteps outside and voices and people walking around. So we all woke up because we all heard it, and someone was at the door. And so Jeannie made us we turned on all the lights, and she told me and Karen to go into our bags and grab our perfume bottles. And she told Cindy was trying to flash. We were a bunch of geeks. Cindy was trying to do SOS with the light switch for the light outside. So, all these brainiacs. And Jeannie was like, "Cindy, no, go get some knives." And she made us stand with hooking our arms together. So we were in a circle so no one could break it.
Right.
And Karen and I had the perfume bottles to spray in their eyes, is what Jeannie said. And her and Cindy had the knives, and something made me look behind me, and I saw my pop standing in the doorway for where the bathroom was, and he just smiled at me. And I turned around to Karen and I said, "Don't worry, they're going to go away now." And she said, "Are you crazy? They're breaking in the door." And so all of a sudden it just stopped. And they went away. We heard them going away, and we heard the car. So we didn't go back to sleep that night. We stayed up, and the next morning, Cindy went to the owners because their house was it was far enough away that they wouldn't have heard us yelling, but we could see it. And she went and she told the owner what happened, and the woman gave her all her money back, and we ended up going back to Boston and not staying there. So
Wow.
When I got home from the trip and I told my parents what happened, my mom was like, "Absolutely, your Pop scared them away. He wasn't going to let anybody mess with you." So that's my story about my Pop.
I love it. That's a great story. Now, let me ask you, there's a couple of different kind of hauntings or ghosts that they talk about. Experts. I'm certainly not an expert. I'm just like everybody else. I'm on a journey, and I'm trying to take in all the information and kind of make sense of it. Now, some people say that when you see somebody, particularly in a place where they've been a lot, like a home or something, that it's just kind of a replay. On the other hand, some people believe that these are spirits visiting us to provide comfort. It sounds like you would probably fall into the latter category where you felt your Pop was coming back to provide comfort. Is that what you think?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think he watches out for us still.
That is so cool. I love it. It's nice to know that you've got somebody on the other side who's in your corner looking out for you, even maybe a lot of times when you don't even know they're there. Well,
exactly.
Carm, great story. Again, thank Michael for me, and thanks for being a part of the campfire tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great night.
Next up on the program is Joseph. He's been listening since around 2009, 2010. Back when there weren't very many paranormal podcasts to listen to, and he stuck with us right along. We appreciate it. Also, he is a veteran of the United States Air Force, and I, for one, would like to thank him for his service. He's going to tell us about a couple of unrelated stories, one regarding his personal UFO sightings, and then, secondly, a story of a demonic entity. Welcome to the program, and thank you for your service to the country.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
So tell us about these UFO sightings.
Well, the first one, I was stationed in Okinawa at Kadena Air Force Base, and I was in the Air Force at the time. And it was real late one night. A good friend of mine and myself were walking We just left the bowling alley. We were going back to our dormitory, and we just happened to look up. There was this triangular shaped craft, with multicolored lights.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing was hovering so low that, it was not an actual military aircraft. And the rate of speed, it was almost like time stood still for a second while we looked up. And I was really trying to bat around in my mind, like, was it loud? Was it quiet? And to be honest, I want to say it was pretty, I don't want to say like soundless, as in silent, but it wasn't loud like you would think. If it was a military aircraft hovering over us, we'd know it.
Right.
And my buddy joked and said, "Oh, it's a B-2 stealth," and I was like, "Nah, I've seen one, and that's not it." But we were actually, the way our dormitory was set up, it was to the right of us, and we were walking down the street. And if you were to look down this hill on Kadena Air Base, the flight line would have been straight ahead, and this craft just disappeared. And there was a big, huge banyan tree, and if you've ever been to Japan, the banyan trees are these huge, beautiful trees that fruit bats like to congregate in.
Okay. And
we got into that tree, and it was almost petrified. Like we were like, "Wow, this is really happening." And he was not a conspiracy theorist. He thought aliens was just mumbo jumbo, but I truly believed. I thought, hey, that's something right there. And let's see, the second occurrence, I was actually in Griffin, Georgia, my hometown, and my wife and I were driving home one night on Airport Road, and we happened to look out the windshield, and we saw this the phenomenon with the ball of light that people seem to see, and it kind of does a zigzag motion.
Right.
We saw that, and it didn't really move until we looked at it. And it was almost like and we actually slowed the vehicle down on the road, and we were both looking out the windshield, and this thing kind of, made a zigzag left, right, left, and then just shot off into space and disappeared. And, I've seen thousands of shooting stars. This was not a shooting star. This thing almost had precision accuracy. There is now on Airport Road, there's a light tower that only goes in a circular motion, and it's a beam of light as opposed to a ball. And I couldn't put my finger on it. She doesn't really believe as strongly as I do, but she looked at me and said, "Joe, that was not normal." And I thought to myself, yeah, that's definitely not something you see every day. So, and there was actually a UFO sighting in Georgia many, many years ago. I can't remember. I actually did the research. I want to say the 70s maybe, like a farmer actually saw a UFO out in this field. And they did a piece on it, the local paper and everything. So there's a little history there about it.
Well, I love the fact that you are a U.S. Air Force veteran and you're saying these things happen. And I think somebody with your background, I think that to me, people like you are some of the most credible witnesses to all of this. And to me, it says there is something going on. Now, I don't necessarily mean or think that means every time somebody sees a UFO, it's little green men. There could be an ET component. There could be a military experimentation component. I think there are a lot of different explanations, but I think that the days of saying, that's just somebody's imagination, I think especially with the revelations that have come out lately, I think those days should be over.
Definitely. Yes, sir. You're exactly right. When we've got technology that's never seen the light of day, and it's probably better that it does not. Because there would be an epidemic of fear, a pandemic, people really, really just contagious fear, and conspiracy. Where now, when things occur, people just scratch their head. People like myself say, wow, that's really amazing. I'm going to take note of that and maybe research it later, but not really go overboard with it. And then, you have the opposite side of the spectrum where people really go overboard and they think we're being invaded, and then of course you have the non-believers that just think, oh, that was a shooting star, or that was a figment of your imagination,
And to me, the most reasonable thing is, look, it's probably a little bit of all three. I mean, I think some of it's military. Some of this, I think maybe people see things and misinterpret them. And I happen to think that there probably is some kind of ET component to some of these. It doesn't have to be just one thing. It could be multiple things. That's not even talking about the idea of other dimensions or these interdimensional travel. I mean, it really, the more you talk about it, the wilder the theories get. But we love hearing real experiences from real people like you, and that's great. Now, I know you also had a story of a demonic entity, and that is chilling.
Yeah, it definitely was. This actually took place in Okinawa, Japan as well. The paranormal history or supernatural history of Okinawa is it's pretty strong. You can research quite a bit of ghost stories and supernatural phenomenon that occurs on the island of Okinawa alone, as well as the mainland in Japan. And so when I was stationed at Kadena Air Base, and my roommate, we had two separate rooms, and he had went to bed, and I went to bed, and there was, we each had our separate doors, and I shut my door. I always locked it at night. And we were on the third floor, and I locked my window as well. Because in the military, you have some jokesters, they want to climb up in your window at night. They don't want the party to stop, or they may open your door and, take something out of your fridge or whatever. And so I always locked the doors, I just didn't want to be bothered when I was sleeping. And one night, I woke up and my window was open, and I thought, that's just really odd because, I'm on the third floor here, and, that's just not normal. And I remember closing it, and this black figure, almost like a shadow figure entity, just engulfed me, almost like at a rate of speed. It was so intense. It was like being hit with a train, and it was almost faster than my eyes could process. And it didn't turn the entire room black. I mean, I could still see this figure was darker than the darkness in the room. And it held me down. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And I almost thought, wow, this is not happening. And, I said a prayer, and just as soon as I did that, this thing just reverted right out of the window and just disappeared. And I got up, I looked at the window, I physically touched it. It was actually open. I run into my roommate's room, and I said, hey, Mike, something's not right about this. And I told him the story, and he goes, yeah, man, if you want to stay in here, bro, and he believed me, and he was actually with me the night we saw the UFO. And it was a weird occurrence. And then of course it didn't happen again. I moved back to Georgia, and when I moved back to Georgia, it didn't occur again until maybe I'd been home a few months. And at the time, my first wife and we were renting an apartment, and she stayed up watching TV. I went to bed, and we had a little dog named Rufus, and he was a little Maltese. And, in the dark of night, you could still see him. He was just a little white dog, and he always slept at the foot of the bed. And one night he starts growling, and he doesn't, at the time he never growled at anything, and he most certainly wouldn't have growled at my ex-wife. And that same black figure appeared, and it was in the doorway. And that thing just, as quickly as I saw it, I mean, it was just the the same emotions, the same feelings I had in Okinawa occurred again, and the emotions flooded me, and this being just held me down, and I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't say anything. And even when I tried to recite a prayer, it was almost like it was constricting me, and I couldn't really even say it in my mind, like it was really controlling me. And I can't say that I had a lot of fear at the time, because I was really just awestruck. I didn't really have a lot of emotions going through my mind at the time. But I did know that how I handled it before, and I just said, "Dear God, help me through this." And of course, Rufus was growling and barking, and I guess he was trying to fight this entity. And that thing reverted right out of the doorway, and the door slammed and disappeared. And at the time, my ex-wife came in and says, "What is wrong with you?" And I really didn't explain it to her. I didn't say anything to her about it. I didn't think she'd really believe me. But it was pretty intense. Pretty intense.
Oh, it sure sounds like it.
It happened a total of 3 times. The third time, nothing spectacular. It was pretty much the same thing all over again. And a prayer got it away. And from that point forward, I would pray every night, for my safety during sleep. And I've researched sleep paralysis. Some similarities, but it didn't really fit the bill. And then I also I spoke to a chaplain, military chaplain, and he told me about the strong man. And he said the strong man, it's a demon, and it was coming for you because it wanted your strength. It wanted your stamina, to come to the dark side. And he said, "I know it sounds crazy, but research it." And the Catholic Bible does talk about quite a few extra things that the Protestant Bible does not. The extended books of the Bible that weren't published with the Protestant Bible. And it's some pretty chilling things if you research it. It's pretty intense.
Well, I've got to say, Joseph, fascinating stories, and really very interesting. And I love when you get these kind of stories from, somebody who's been in the military. They train you to be very level-headed and react to things in a very calm way. And to get that kind of testimony from somebody like you with that background, I think that's very powerful. And I'd like to thank you for being a part of the campfire tonight.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the campfire, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. And thanks to all of our storytellers, because if that wasn't for them, well, there wouldn't be any campfire. If you want to tell your story, you can go over to jimharold.com/campfire, and we'll be in touch. And then also, if you want to go somewhere, a great community where people can share their campfire stories 24/7, 365 days a year, go to our virtual campfire group on Facebook. It's absolutely free. Very easy way to get to it is virtualcampfiregroup.com. And finally, if you say, "Hey, Jim, I noticed that you have about a dozen free campfire episodes at any given time, but where are these other hundreds of campfire episodes that you did before, going all the way back to 2009? Well, my friend, all you have to do is go over to jimharoldplus.com. That's jimharoldplus.com. Sign up, click on the banner, sign up to become a member, and you'll get access to a whole treasure trove of shows. 300 plus campfire episodes no longer on the free feed. Hundreds of paranormal podcasts and hundreds of more shows that I've done that have never been free unless you, or you wouldn't have access to them unless you're a member of the Plus Club. So I think you should check it out. I am biased, but go to jimharoldplus.com. Plus, we have a great sale going on there right now, and it really powers our shows. It makes them go. We thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time, and as always, stay spooky. Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Jim Harold's Campfire. Tune in again next time for more stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things.